Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something really fascinating, how organizations are adapting, innovating, really trying to connect with people, especially thinking about religious outreach.
Yeah, and our mission here is to pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising facts from these sources we've got called emerging strategies.
We're looking for those ideas that, might apply way beyond just one area.
And what really jumps out right away is this core theme. Innovation, real innovation, isn't just jargon. It's crucial if you're serious about reaching communities.
Right.
It shows you're open to new ways of doing things, committed to tackling what the source calls, pretty provocatively, the lostness of our culture.
That drive to connect, it's powerful. And it leads to some really unexpected moves. You got to hear this quote. It's from Byron Davis, a lay leader at Seacoast Church.
Okay.
He said, "Our problem was that people were showing up and the town shut down any expansion hopes.
Uh-oh.
We aren't content whenever people are going to hell if we can make a difference." Pretty strong words. At first, we thought the resistance was the devil, but actually expanding to multiple campuses was the best thing we could do. God had his hands in it.
That's incredible. It shows how sometimes a roadblock, what seems like a total dead end, can actually push you towards your most groundbreaking ideas, necessity and invention, right?
Totally. And that feeling, that realization, it leads straight into some big strategic shifts we see in the sources.
Yeah, let's dig into those.
Okay, first up, this major shift highlighted is the resurgence of church planting. Now, you might think established groups would just focus on, keeping things going.
Maintaining, yeah.
Not this surge in starting new things. But the sources show this, unexpected growth. There was a survey back in 2004.
Right, for the North American Mission Board.
Yeah, involving 124 different groups. And the finding, get this, not one respondent indicated a decreased interest in church planting.
Not one out of 124.
Nope. Almost all said their interest increased. Many said dramatically.
That's pretty compelling. And it's not just talk, right? You see it in what was getting published.
How so?
Well, between 96 and 2002, only 2 mainstream books on the topic. But then, boom, 2003 to 2005, at least 8, with more coming.
So it really was a rediscovery, like the source says.
Exactly, dusting off an old strategy for new challenges.
Okay, so it's not just new churches. It's also how existing ones are rethinking things. Another big shift, the rise of multiple venues for mission.
Ah, yes, the whole one church, 2 locations idea.
Which sounded kind of weird just a few years back, apparently.
It really did. Now, it's pretty common.
So why? Why do that?
Well, the sources stress experimenting with new expressions of the church, but, for new cultures, helping people experience church in a language they understand.
That makes sense for any group trying to reach different audiences, really. Cultural relevance.
Without losing the core message, yeah.
And it's not just multiple places, it's multiple services, too. Remember when adding a service was just, because you ran out of seats.
Oh, yeah, the 80% capacity rule. Pure logistics.
Exactly. But now, it's strategic. There's choice.
Right. They're doing it to keep things feeling intimate even when growing fast, or to offer different times.
Or design services for specific groups.
Precisely. Or even freeing up the popular service times for people who aren't connected yet.
That's so different from the old just build a bigger auditorium approach.
Totally. The sources even point out new megachurches aren't doing that giant single-room thing much anymore. They mention one with an 8,000-seat place as, an outlier.
So it's less, bigger is better, and more tailored is better.
You got it. And if you zoom out, this whole multi-site Movement One organization, many locations, really captures this thinking.
How widespread is it?
Pretty widespread. Warren Bird from the Leadership Network mentioned at least 1,000 churches in North America described as multi-site.
1,000, wow.
And it's not brand new either. Elmer Towns apparently saw this coming way back in 1990. He wrote about churches doing the one church, many locations thing even then.
That's a massive change in just a couple of decades. So how does it actually work? Are there different models?
Yeah, the sources lay out 3 basic types. You've got multiple sites, but just one main teaching pastor, maybe piped in via video or rotating.
Okay.
Then multiple sites with multiple different teaching pastors, and then multiple sites that rely heavily on video venues for the teaching content.
And why are they doing this? What are the strategic drivers?
Dave Travis lists a whole bunch. It can be a way to plant new churches or target specific age groups or, lifestyle segments.
Practically reasons, too, I bet. Like if you can't expand your building.
Exactly. Or creating special branches, like in prisons or nursing homes, reaching different language groups, even helping out other churches in their network. It's really versatile.
But it can't be easy. Sounds like a logistical headache. What kind of challenges pop up?
Oh, absolutely. The sources flag some big ones, like defining roles. Who's the main preacher? What does the campus pastor actually do? How does music and arts work across sites?
Yeah. Keeping everyone focused must be tough.
And just finding the key staff and volunteers you need for each new site, it's a lot to manage.
Definitely sounds complex. But while that's happening, the sources also talk about something almost opposite. This growing interest in really small, intimate house churches.
Yeah, a parallel trend. Mike Steele from Dawn Ministry apparently counted 150 networks of these across North America.
150 networks. That's significant.
And they often prefer the term Koinos church.
Koinos.
Why that? It's Greek for all things in common. It emphasizes the relational aspect. They can meet anywhere. Home, clubhouse, coffee shop. It's about the connection, not the physical place.
Okay, so help me clarify. A home cell is like a small group within a bigger church, right?
Exactly, part of a larger structure. But a house church, or Koinos church, that is the church. It's the whole unit, self-contained.
Got it.
And here's the really interesting part about their growth. They multiply, not enlarge. As they grow, instead of becoming one big group, they split off and start another small group. The home, or wherever they meet, stays the permanent facility in a sense.
Yeah.
They focus on keeping those face-to-face relationships.
That's a totally different model. Scaling out, not up.
Right, which maybe helps counter that unfair stereotype the source mentions.
The idea that they're all cults or just weird.
Yeah. The source is clear. The impactful ones are just New Testament Christians seeking to be faithful. It's about changing how we see these decentralized models.
So what actually makes it a church then, not just a gathering?
Good question. The source defines it pretty clearly. It needs to be a self-governing group of believers, covenanted together, practicing things like baptism and the Lord's Supper, showing the characteristics of a New Testament church.
So specific functions and structure.
Right. It needs pastor elders, exercising spiritual gifts, focused on mission. It's more than just, meeting up.
Which addresses that common interpretation of Matthew 18.20, where 2 or 3 are gathered.
Exactly. The source says, sure, Christ is present, but that doesn't automatically equal a fully functioning local church with all its biblical roles and responsibilities. It needs those organizational elements to fulfill the mission.
Okay, so this rising interest in Koinos churches, it's seen as positive.
Generally, yeah. It shows openness to new missional approaches. But, and this is important, the source also stresses the need for guidance. How to do it right, biblically speaking.
So innovation has to be grounded.
Right. Aligning the how with the why.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me. The sources then look outside North America.
Yeah, arguing that many of those churches look more like our future churches than those that exist in North America today. Lots to learn globally.
Okay, let's hear some examples.
First one, the Marzahn Youth Church in East Berlin, Germany. Talk about a tough context.
East Berlin.
Yeah.
Yeah, post-communist, very atheistic background.
Thoroughly and emphatically atheistic, the source says. And adult church growth was super slow.
So what do?
They made a strategic choice. Focus entirely on the youth. Saw them as a bridge into the community, a beachhead, an arrow to get through that hardened post-communist mindset.
Interesting entry point strategy.
The goal was helping youth hear the message in their culture, see changed lives, find loving communities, experience God, and sort of challenge their old worldview.
Did it work?
Seems like it. At the time the paper was written, they'd seen 20 young people commit to Christ, 40 to 50 attending weekly, with a vision for 200 by 2007.
That's real progress in a resistant place. Shows the power of finding that receptive subgroup.
Definitely. Okay, another one. A house church planted among Japanese nurses.
Nurses in Japan, that's specific.
Yeah, a group called RAC, Rethinking Authentic Christianity. They succeeded because they really understood this group.
What was unique about them?
3 things stood out. 1, they wanted healing. I mean, think about the stress, being around sickness and death constantly. 2, many were into New Age stuff, looking for spiritual answers because they saw medicine's limits, thought about life and death. And 3, even though they were scientific, they were still searching for hope, purpose, acceptance, things they hadn't found.
So how did REC approach them?
They had to tailor the message. tackling key theological ideas like the headship of Christ, priesthood of believers, spiritual power, even imagination, in a way that was culturally relevant, yet biblical and authentic.
So deep audience understanding was key again. Tailoring the message without watering it down.
Exactly. And then there's this final one, which is pretty radical, the factory mission in Hong Kong.
Factory mission.
Yeah. Dr. Agnes Liu observed that Christianity there was mostly middle class, the working class, largely unreached.
Okay, so what does she do? Something drastic.
You could say that. She actually worked months as a seamstress in a factory.
Wow, she worked in the factory.
As a seamstress?
For months, just to learn the culture from the inside out, the dialect, the values, their needs, who their heroes were. That's incredible. That's not just research, that's immersion.
Total immersion.
Yeah.
She got to understand the monotony, futility, alienation, and work-induced sicknesses firsthand. True empathy.
Stepping right into their shoes, not just observing.
Absolutely. And the result? She and her team started lailed factory fellowships within the factories, bringing it right to where people lived their daily lives.
Innovation driven by deep, deep understanding.
Exactly.
You know, all these examples, local and global, they really circle back to that core missional drive the sources mentioned.
Yeah, like that description of Jesus in Luke as a friend of sinners.
Which wasn't a compliment back then. It was because he deliberately went where the sinners were.
Right. Luke 5:29-31 has that great line from Jesus.
Mm.
It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance.
That perspective really fuels these strategies, doesn't it? Reaching people who need help, even if it means getting out of your comfort zone, organizationally or culturally.
It's the underlying why.
So as you, our listener, are reflecting on all this innovation, all this adaptation,
Right.
we want to leave you with what the sources call the Breaking the Code Challenge.
Yeah, think about this. If the code needs to be broken in your community, in your organization's world, what new ways of connecting need to be on the table?
Who are the specific people, maybe overlooked groups, in your area that might need a totally new approach, a different kind of church or connection?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe most importantly, what are the actual practical steps your church or your organization could take to genuinely reach those people, those segments, those environments you might be missing now?
It's a lot to think about. Hopefully this deep dive gives you some food for thought, maybe sparks an idea for innovation in your own context.